Okay, so I saw this little video and I wanted to react to it and kind of give sort of a few thoughts for you guys to think about. Now, this pianist is a very good pianist. I think he also teaches, and I mean no disrespect to this person, but this is a very common kind of thing that I see on YouTube that is very misleading, especially to people who are novices or beginners at the keyboard. So this idea of stretching the hand is very common, very popular. People talk about ways of increasing your hand span. Now this is kind of a misnomer. Over time, as you play piano and your hand gets used to wider and wider intervals, you will be more comfortable or able to play wider intervals. However, what most people do is they try to go straight to the really wide intervals and force the hand to stretch. And this is actually really bad in many ways. Sort of like when you are attempting to increase mobility of, I don't know, any other joint. Let's say you're trying to do the side splits. You can't go from my hips are really stiff, you know, to all of a sudden I'm doing the side splits because I just put a bunch of weight that physically forces me down. That's how you tear ligaments and do bad things. Well, the hand isn't really any different. What I've noticed in my own playing is that not really ever focusing on increasing hand span, but over time playing wider and wider intervals. And I do this with my students, right? They have to play, fifths, and then eventually sixths, going in both directions. So extending the thumb, extending the fifth finger, then maybe a seventh. And over time it goes to an octave. And then long time after that, maybe they kind of go to a ninth, which maybe they can play on the edge of the white keys. Over time, the hand gets used to that position and it gets more comfortable. So you're slowly increasing the range of motion. And I say that specifically, range of motion, rather than increasing the hand span, because I think that it's a different way of thinking about it. The other thing that's important is how you do that. Most of the time people try to stretch the hand apart as hard as possible. This makes everything really stiff and tight. If I do that, so I feel like I'm pulling the hand apart at the fingertips. If I do that, this feels really bad. It hurts, which is what most people would say. Oh, it hurts. It's uncomfortable. But if I feel like I'm just opening my palm, okay, like this, and as I go into the keys kind of force my fingers apart. So when I'm in this position, it almost feels like a resting position, kind of like this. I just kind of slide apart like this. Obviously there has to be some opening, but then the keyboard kind of pulls me apart. That's more of like, using some sort of active stretch, like a weighted stretch. So you actually let the weight of your body kind of push you down into that deep stretch, but not going beyond what's actually comfortable. So in other words, if I was trying to do that with a tenth, it feels pretty uncomfortable because my hand is not really used to that. And so it's, there's a tendency for muscles to tense up. And actually, this is a really important thing to understand, is that most of the time when, you have a limited range of motion, let's say with your hips or whatever, it's not that, you're incapable of wider range of motion. It's that your body doesn't think it's safe to let that joint move past the normal range of motion, okay? And this is a really interesting but also important topic, is that when you're stretching, it's really more about the brain than the actual muscles themselves. This is why slowly trying to, spending time in that stretch state position and then slowly increasing that stretch little by little, you're essentially teaching your brain, teaching your nerves, teaching your body that it's okay to go farther. Because again, most of the time, your brain literally says, this is unsafe, I have to add tone to that muscle, stiffen the muscle up, don't let it go farther. This can happen at the piano too, and it can cause all kinds of problems. That's important to understand. The other thing I just wanted to mention here is that this person I saw, this pianist, in a previous video, in a different comment where he was talking about being able to play a tenth. Someone kind of commented that basically like, well, yeah, probably you really can't. And this person responded by saying, I can play scales and tenths. And then I think they possibly posted this little video as a way of proving that. kudos to them. That was very clean, very impressive. But here's sort of the thing that I just want to make note of this and that kind of idea that they're putting forward, that they can play scales in tenths. First of all, they can't play scales in tenths. They can play a C major scale in tenths, and exclusively C major because they have to play on the edge of the white keys, and you can see that in the video. If they go over the keys, they can't actually reach it, which means no other key will actually be available to them. That's the first thing. The second thing is, in what situation is this actually useful? So again, a novice might look at this and say, wow, that's amazing. I can't do that. Great. The problem again is, in what context is this actually useful? Show me a piece of music where you have to do that, right? Chances are, if you can, it's going to be something incredibly obscure that almost no one will even want to play because it's just not very musical, or it's not very interesting, or whatever it is. The point being is that it's just not practical, right? That's the sense that it's slightly misleading, is that a novice would say, oh, I need to do this. You know, I need to stretch my hand and do all these kinds of things because I want to be able to do that. Well, great if what you're looking for is an impressive little thing that your friends won't be able to do. But if you actually want to play music, then I don't really recommend doing those kinds of things because, again, they're not really helpful. And this goes back to this idea that people have that the wider your hand span is, the easier it is to play because you can reach more notes. Well, what that does is it just stretches your hand out. It creates tension in the wrist and in the forearm, okay, and the hand, and that makes you less mobile. It makes it much harder to play. Stretch your fingers apart like this, and then try to move them up and down. You'll notice that's way harder. Exactly my point. So what's important is mobility, being able to move, not being able to reach. You see this all the time. I try to reach as far as I can, and then I play that, and it's much, much harder. It's harder to control the notes, harder to control the sound, and harder to play accurately. So, just a little comment and reaction to this video. Hope it was helpful. Thank you guys so much for watching. See you next time.